Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a weekly reading update, and I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read this week rather than doing a monthly wrap-up where I have to then talk about probably like 15 plus books and try and give you an idea for each one. This will be a bit more targeted, so you're getting a review for all of the books, and then I can talk a little bit more about them, and hopefully that will be better for everyone. So let's get started. I read 6.5 books, and some are books, some were Audible, and some were Kindle. So I also am trying to read a little bit outside my comfort zone. So there's a graphic novel in here, a webtoon, and some manga. I think that's how you say it. So let's get into these books, and I'll start off with the first book that I finished, which was Third Girl by Agatha Christie. And the Audible versions of those are really good, narrated by Hugh Fraser. I highly recommend them. And I really like this. This is Hercule Poirot. I know I'm not saying that right. And Ariadne Oliver. And I love Ariadne Oliver. She is a crime, like she writes like murder stories. And then, so she's an author. And she's a character that's reoccurring in Christie's novels. And her and Hercule Poirot are my favorite. More so even than like Poirot and Hastings, Captain Hastings, who's his other kind of like person he is in the novels with, who helps him, kind of like his Watson. But I love their relationship. They play off each other so well, and you have like this kind of mutual respect, but they both kind of think the other person is crazy. And it kind of reminds me of like my relationship with my husband. I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. Like they totally understand the other person's abilities, and they see that they have a lot of strengths, but then they're also like, but you're crazy. And I love it. It's perfect for me. Third Girl starts out with a girl coming to Poirot's office, and she says, I think I might have killed somebody. And then immediately looks at him and is like, but you're too old. So he is very offended by this, obviously, and he decides to try and help her in this case that he doesn't know if it's a case or if it's not, or if she's crazy. So it starts off this kind of chain of events where then Ariadne Oliver comes in and helps him, and then they solve the case together. And I think this is a super fun book. I really liked it. Like I said, the narration is great on these, so if you want to try it out on Audible, I highly recommend. The next one was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and I believe it was originally written by somebody else, and then he kind of took the notes and refined it all. So if I can find the person who originally wrote the story, I'll put it there. But anyway, Patrick Ness is the one that is listed as the author. So this is a book that deals with a lot of heaviness. It is very, I don't know how to say this without spoilers, so minor spoilers starting now. This is about grief. The child in this book is dealing with his mom has cancer, and you're kind of seeing this progression of his feelings and as the mom's declining in health, how he's dealing with it. And it is very, very difficult book. I think it's well done and can definitely help to show how children especially deal with grief and how they process grief. But if you're going through something and, dealing with your own grief, this may not be the time to read this book. I found myself sobbing in my kitchen trying to like get through the end of this novel, and it's very short, but it's difficult. So I would say like it's definitely worth the read. I thought it was really good. The narration was fine. It was another Audible one, but it was definitely not something you can just go into. It's not lighthearted. This is really tears at you at times, and really is very difficult to deal with this this child who has to deal with such a heavy thing of, having to deal with the possible loss of his mother. So that was the next one that I did. And then trying to read outside my comfort zone, I got some manga. Once again, I think that's how you say it. And this one, LDK, was done. There's a movie adaptation of this, which I have seen, and was not super impressed by it. But this is about a girl in high school who has to, through, circumstances, ends up living with a very popular boy from her high school. They live together in an apartment building. And this is definitely not geared towards my age group. I'm in my 30s, so the whole struggles of the average high school girl, which this is never like what is actually being written about. They're not average high school girls, because I very much doubt that most girls have their own apartment rented and are living with another guy while they're in high school. I don't even know if legally in the US you can rent an apartment as a high school student. That seems weird to me, but maybe you can, I don't know. So through happenstance, and she meets a guy, she ends up being like kind of befriending him, and he's very standoffish with all the other girls because he's very popular, and he feels like everybody just kind of is after him for his looks and for what they can get from him. And so he, of course, feels like she's different, and they kind of have this like, is this going to be a romance? Is it not? But I don't love high school stories. High school wasn't like my favorite time of life, so I don't really relate to the whole high school girl very well. And this is a very like romanticized relationship that's kind of weird and a little bit sexualized, and also there's a lot of body shaming and probably some consent issues for sure in this book, so take it with a grain of salt. The adaptation too, with these movie adaptations, are usually really rushed, so you're kind of getting like the manga backstory in narration, and then like they put in some of the actual story to kind of just put out a movie, and they're not, in my opinion, not that great. This one anyway. I've seen a few. The other one that I read was a side character's love story, which is about a girl in her 20s who feels like she is a side character in her own life, never the main character. So she has not found love, she's not had a relationship, and she's working at a convenience store, and then ends up kind of having this crush on her coworker, and then where it goes from there. This was much cuter. Like I said, these are just the first, like, I don't know, part of these. So I'm just getting a taste for what the story will be about. But this is really sweet and cute, and she's definitely like a more relatable, to me anyway, person. She's got a lot of insecurities. She's not really sure of herself, and she's really trying to find out who she is as she's now in her 20s, and she's working and trying to relate to her coworkers. So I think that one was better in my opinion, and I found it, a quick read. Obviously, I have a full review on this. The Last Ronan, loved it. It's great. And I just recently rewatched the first Ninja Turtles movie, and also still love it. It's great. So I highly recommend. This is obviously Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it is kind of, a final goodbye to a lot of these characters. And so I think definitely read it if you're a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at all. It's really good. So I have to get into WEBTOONS. So there are a lot of K-dramas based off of WEBTOONS. And one of the first ones that I heard about was Cheese in the Trap. Let me make sure I'm saying, yeah, Cheese in the Trap, which is, I've seen the K-drama and I have started the webtoon. I'm almost halfway through, and I will say that this is a difficult one because the acting in the K-drama is quite good. All of the actors are pretty they're well-known actors, and they're pulling their weight here. They're doing their job, but with the webtoon especially, I feel like a lot is lost in translation for me, because you have this girl who's in college and she's really struggling, and she doesn't know if she wants to go back to this next semester. At least how the webtoon is starting out, and I don't know how they do their things in the US. It's semester, so I'm just going to go off of that. But she doesn't know if she wants to go back, and because of this other student. And in the webtoon, it's really hard in a translation to grasp the interactions between them as how in the K-drama they're portrayed. The K-drama to me is okay. It wasn't anything like amazing. It's not quite slice of life. It's not quite like college drama. It's not quite college romance, and it's not like quite like melodrama mystery. It tries to be kind of all those things, and I feel like fails because it's just not quite any of those. And there's never like enough drama and enough like of a turn in a character to be like, oh, they're evil, or what's the mystery behind their like life story that makes them this way. And there's never like quite enough romance to make it a romance, not quite enough college drama to make it a college drama. It's just, it's not quite any of the things that I really wanted. And I will say, like, the strength of it is the actors. They do a good job. But when I was reading the webtoon, I had to keep going down to the comments and seeing people who were saying things like, oh, if you're reading this part, it's not translated very well because it's the way he's saying something that comes off threatening. So it's like she's having these interactions with this guy and she feels very uncomfortable with him at times. And then he's saying things in a way, but if you don't, like, just saying something, you wouldn't get tone. You wouldn't get, like, if you don't, if it's translated, you're not fully understanding like why she's perceiving him to be like he's messed up, there's something wrong with him. So I will say it's not my favorite. I do think it's hard with translations to fully grasp, like, if you don't know the culture, if you don't know the language, then it's really hard to fully understand the story. And I think the K-drama does a better job of showing, obviously, like, the tone of how he is with her, and it, to me, worked a little bit better. I am going to try and finish up the webtoon. It's an okay story. To me, it's just not amazing. I know there are a lot of other ones that have K-dramas that they're adaptations, so I will look into those too. I definitely enjoy K-dramas, so that's why I wanted to see about these webtoons to see if they were good. And I just think maybe this isn't the one for me. It's been a while since I've been in college, and just the whole college drama and interactions amongst college kids just doesn't really do it for me. Also, I feel like she comes off very unsure of herself, and you're never sure why. Obviously, because of the translation, it's very hard to understand why she's so kind of like anxious, and she seems very like almost afraid of things and very like fearful to go back to school. And because you've just seen little like interactions with this guy character that seems a little bit off with her, you're not fully understanding like where's she coming from. And then of course, light spoiler, later on he seems to develop feelings for her, and so it's like, is this real, is this genuine? And also I think that the K-drama did a better job of showing that than the webtoon translation. But if I was reading it in the original language, which would be Korean, I'm sure I would understand it better, but I just didn't. And it is a very popular webtoon and K-drama, and I definitely recommend. The acting is good. It's just, especially if you like that kind of college melodrama a bit, then you probably like it a lot more than me. But I'm old, so it's a bit hard for me. So then lastly, I just finished up Partners in Crime, which is a Tommy and Tuppence collection of stories. And they start off, the first book in this series of Tommy and Tuppence, which is an Agatha Christie series. It's they're like a crime fighting kind of partnership. And the first story is like an actual full like origin story almost of how they got into kind of this detective work. And then this one, Partners in Crime, is their detective agency that they get involved in, and then they're solving crimes together. And it's all like little short stories from their detective days. So Tommy and Tuppence are a married couple, and they work together at a detective agency, like I said. So I really like these characters. This is not my favorite Agatha Christie novel, and not my favorite like Agatha Christie detectives at all. But I will say their strength is their relationship. They're very respectful of each other. I love that they're a married couple that, they tease each other. They're very cute together, but also they really know the other person's abilities and respect them. And the wife is equal, if not better than her husband in a lot of ways, as far as like research and knowing things that help them along the way for their different cases that they have to solve. And he is, he knows like what he has with her. At one point he tells the other guy that works with them, like, she's worth more than both of us. And he's super like supportive husband, and I like their interactions. They're very like sweet, and it's just a nice like feel good for the most part, kind of like little detective stories. And I think that they, are fun. It's not deep, obviously. These aren't like really intricate cases that are being solved, but for like fun little short stories all thrown together, I feel like it was a good collection, and I enjoyed it. And obviously this was Audible, and Hugh Fraser once again narrating, and he's amazing. So those are all the books that I'm got through this week, and then I will tell you what I'm currently reading and what I plan to. Then I'll have my wrap up for next week, so you'll know if I actually finish. It also kind of holds me accountable. because I tend to get distracted. So, currently reading The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. I'm about halfway through, and I will say my issue with this book as a collection of short sci-fi stories is that the first one really starts you off with a bang, and then it kind of is hard to maintain that momentum with the other stories. So if you read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. The first story is kind of a gut punch, and then it kind of doesn't really, none of the other stories I've read so far has been at that same level. But so far it's interesting, so we'll see how I feel at the end. And then The Girl Who Kept Winter, I believe this is another translated work, and this definitely has a drama feel to it if you watch any Asian dramas. It starts off with a girl who's about to be married, against her will, and she is going, she goes on like kind of a last mission. Her family owns a dojo, and she is trained in martial arts, and so she has like a final thing to complete before her wedding. That's not really explained what she's doing, but she ends up meeting with some people, and she meets the Poison King and ends up being poisoned by him. And then kind of the story goes on from there. Like her interactions with him lead to other things happening, and I will say the problem I have with this right now is that it had a lot of momentum building up of like, okay, her wedding and her meeting the Poison King, and then what are we going to do about this wedding and all this stuff. And it was much more dramatic. And then we get on the side character quests, which I feel have really ground this story to a halt. And I'm not interested in these characters. I want to get back to the main. So we'll see. The other book, and I will say this, I have been trying to read this book for a really long time, and I can get through like 2 pages and then I have to stop. This may be the worst teenage vampire love story ever. And I have read Twilight. I've read all those books. So I am reading Crave, and I hate this book right now. I have gotten through the first interaction between the 2 main characters, and let me tell you, it is a mess. It is a real big mess. And I don't know how this book is going to redeem itself, and I just don't know that I believe that it can. So there may be a rant review coming of this, because I might just need to devote my time to this story and be angry about it. But there is so much wrong with that first interaction between the 2 main characters that like I could write my own book about it. So I did finish Cheese in the Trap drama-wise, K-drama, and then I finished a Chinese drama called Love. Let's see. Okay. I finished a Chinese drama called Love Between Fairy and Devil. This is a super hype drama. If you know anything about dramas or followed dramas at all, this one was extremely hyped, and like people loved it. It got very good reviews pretty much across the board. And it also starred 2 very popular Chinese actors. And it is good. It is very good, very worth watching. The sets, the costumes, everything about this is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Everywhere they go in this world has its own look, has its own aesthetic. It is so well done, and you can tell they had money, which is great because that's what's usually lacking in a lot of these dramas. But I will say with this drama, once again, we kind of had this amazing momentum going with these 2 main characters. And then it did some things and kind of went in a direction where it really halted the story for me. And then we kind of had to pick it back up. So I ended up taking a break from it and then coming back and finishing it up really quickly. I like the story. I like the ending, but I don't know that for me it was such a memorable drama. And I think the problem is that the main character in this, the main male lead, he was in Miss the Dragon, I think like last year or the year before, which was really bad. And his acting was, criticized a lot. And then he was in this drama where he's improved. His acting is good. His chemistry with the lead is really good. So I think people just kind of were so burned by that other drama that they judged this to be so much better. And it is, and he deserves, all the praise for, he has improved so much. And I think the acting is great. And I think his chemistry with the lead is really good, but it is also just, to me, okay. I think it's, like I said, the money is there. The acting is good. It's a fun story, but because it tries to do so many different tropes, there's like the different worlds. So it's like she's kind of from like the good fairy realm and he's the, Moon Kingdom Lord or something. You've got like the separation there, and then you've also got body swapping. There's a love triangle. There's a lot of things thrown in, and the really interesting aspects of it kind of get halted when they end up having to go to the human world. That to me was where the story just boom slowed down. I mean, like, we live here in the human world. We know how boring it is, and it's just as boring in the story. So I do think it's good, worth watching, and definitely was fun. But I did think that for me, that was really a slowdown for the story, and then was kind of hard for me to pick it back up and feel like I'm really invested in this relationship. So that's what I read, watched, listened to this week, and I'm hoping to get through, like I said, a couple more of these books. I've also got a few more Agatha Christie novels to listen to on my Audible, and also a few physical copies of her books that I'm hoping to get to. So we'll see what I actually get to next week when I do my next update. I am not sure I'm ever going to get back to Rings of Power, but if anyone is interested in that, leave it in the comments. There's just not much to say about that series in my opinion, but also Andor has come out, and my husband's a big Star Wars fan, so if you want us to do a episode together, another nerd versus novice talking about Andor, we definitely can. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.